The next space race. Introduction. For decades, the space race was dominated by two countries, Russia and the US. But now India and China are among a group of countries creeping up on the two superpowers, challenging their dominance not only in exploration but also in the commercial space sector and, critically, in the use of space for military purposes. Meanwhile, last month India set a record when it launched more than 100 satellites on a single rocket, only 3 of which were Indian. Thanks to lower costs for launches, up to 70% cheaper by some estimates, India is able to undercut not only US competition but also similar services offered in China. That said, the Chinese commercial space business is booming, but due to security concerns, it's often a less attractive option for private companies than India. Future conflicts on Earth are more likely to have a space component, said Brian Wheaton, Director of Program Planning at the Secure World Foundation. This is a brave new world they really haven't had to deal with before, and it is something that really concerns the US military. When it comes to military advancements, China has positioned itself as the biggest threat to American and Russian dominance in space. China. Number 1. Colony on Moon. Beijing has plans to land astronauts on the dark side of the Moon by 2036, is investigating the possibility of building a permanent radar station on the Moon, and has stated a wish to send a manned mission to Mars in the following decades. NASA hasn't sent people beyond low Earth orbit since 1972, but following a recent push from Trump, the agency is not ruling out a manned mission to orbit the Moon as soon as 2018. Like China, Russia is also investigating the possibility of building a colony on the Moon, with plans announced last year for sending a dozen cosmonauts by 2030. Number 2. Communication GPS and telescope. China recently launched the world's first quantum satellite, designed in part to establish unhackable communication. Last year, after 22 years of planning, the Chinese powered up the world's largest radio telescope. The country is also developing its own version of GPS, called Beidou, currently being used to track and guide about 40,000 fishing vessels in the highly contentious South China Sea. Number 3. Anti-satellite system. In 2007, it tested an anti-satellite system that allowed it to successfully shoot down a Chinese satellite. Number 4. Space Station. China's most ambitious near-term project is the launch of its own space station by 2022, which coincides with the beginning of the end of the International Space Station. This week, the country's space agency confirmed the main core element of the space station is set to launch next year. India. Number 1. India made history when the Indian Space Research Organisation, ISRO, launched a single rocket that carried 104 satellites into low Earth orbit. If the ban is lifted, India could soon see a flood of US companies using its services, at the expense of US-based commercial services like SpaceX and Blue Origin. This may explain why the Indian government's space program is currently focusing primarily on commercial launches of smaller satellites. Number 2. India's ability to attract customers from around the globe by offering low-cost and reliable launches could pay off in a big way. There are currently just under 1,500 operational satellites orbiting Earth, but that figure is set to explode in the next decade, with as many as 13,000 satellites slated for launch, according to Wheaton. Number 3. India mission to Venus, Mars, and Moon. India is planning for a mission on Venus for first time. Chandrayaan-2 mission to Moon is already in progress and mission to Mars which will include lander and rover. Number 4. Threat from China aggressive stance India plan to counter it working on anti-satellite missile. Conclusion. Though China is aggressively pushing forward on space exploration and military fronts, the same can't be said for its commercial and private space industries. There, India appears best positioned to disrupt the market. Space is going to be a lot different. In the future US and Russia will face a tough competition from two Asian neighbors. World is ready for a new race in space. Wait and watch who wins, but one thing is sure, whoever wins the race, mankind should be benefited from it.